Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to the panel today, panel discussion on building planet positive businesses. Uh, Let me give you a quick background about it. So, COVID-19 is turning our lives upside down. People all around the world are taking to the streets and joining in solidarity for a once-in-a-generation opportunity to reimagine and create a better future, one that is more equal, more active on climate change, that ends poverty and improves and protects health. We have the universal plan we need for just and sustainable recovery from the pandemic, that is the Sustainable Development Goals. And this particular week, September 18 to 26, while the world leaders are actually meeting virtually at the UN General Assembly, we are joining millions of people and organizations everywhere to take actions for the goals and to encourage businesses to play an active role in building a sustainable planet. This is a turning point for people and the planet. Let's turn it in the right direction and recover better together. As they say, never let a crisis go waste. Let's turn it into an opportunity. Fandoro, so myself, I'm Smita Mishra, and I'm the founder and CEO of Fandoro. Fandoro is a platform for enterprises to identify and manage their sustainability-related risks and opportunities. In short, we help enterprises build their sustainability plan and execute it, and then report it as a transparent sustainability report. We are a member of United Nations Global Compact Network in India and have joined Act for SDGs Campaign Week as a member for taking action. I welcome you all to the panel discussion, and let me quickly start with a quick round of introduction from our panelists. So welcome Vikram, Sanjay, Piyush, and Ria. I'm so honored and humbled. You all are on mute. Do I have to unmute you? Okay.
Hi, Smita.
Yes.
Hi.
Hi, Smita. So I'm so humbled and honored by your presence and for accepting the invite to be here with us today. If we could quickly start with a round of introduction going in the order of Vikram, Sanjay, Piyush, and then Ria. Also, I'm mentioning, when did you first hear the term SDGs in your life?
That's a good question. So let me quickly introduce myself. Vikram Gupta. I'm the founder and managing partner at IDK Ventures. We are a venture capital fund investing at early to growth stages of businesses across sectors. We've been in existence for 9 years now. We have a portfolio of 20 companies so far. Ticket size, we invest starting at 200,000, going up to $7 to $8 million. Our corpus or funds under management right now is about $200 million. The first time I heard the term SDG was actually about a year ago, in I would say July of last year to be precise, when I was actually meeting one of the very large family offices out of UK and discussing investments with them, and I was quite pleasantly surprised with their portfolio of impact investments and the focus on SDG framework, and that's what got me excited, and I've been working on this space since then, and I'm very, very excited about this area.
Great.
Hello, everyone. I'm Sanjay Kadaveru. I'm the founder and president at Action for India. We work with social entrepreneurs in India and help scale the impact of their work. We've been around again for about 9 years or so. We launched in early 2012, and over the course of this time, we've engaged with about 1,000 social entrepreneurs across a variety of sectors, including education, healthcare, agriculture, fintech, clean tech, livelihoods. And uh, uh, for a discussion like this, there's a little bit of, when people talk about social entrepreneurs, there's no universal consensus in terms of who these individuals or organizations are. Most people's default assumption is that we are talking about some kind of a not-for-profit NGO. Not always, not quite. And the definition that we use for a social entrepreneur is any organization that's developing products or services that proactively, by intention, not as a byproduct, making things better for those in the underserved communities and attempt to do it at scale. So the bottom of the pyramid orientation and the ambition of scale is critical for our definition of what is a social enterprise. So we go to great lengths to identify the high potential social entrepreneurs of the country and then connect them with resources, be it funding, mentors, technology resources, government decision makers, customers, and what have you. We are based in New Delhi, but we also have a Silicon Valley chapter, and we try to connect the resource of Silicon Valley with the leading social entrepreneurs of India. Earlier this year, we've launched a social entrepreneurship accelerator at IIT Hyderabad. And going back to the question with respect to when did I first hear about SDGs, I used to be a regular attendee at the Clinton Global Initiative in New York for several years. And I think in 2015, at the time, I think that was the first year when SDGs came into account. When I attended the conference, that's when one of the speakers at the CGI conference, and there's an overlap between the UN General Assembly and the CGI. That's when I first remember hearing about this, and I felt that, yeah, this is a great global framework which can kind of converge and align with respect to the work that we are trying to do to build more planet-positive businesses on planet Earth. Thank you.
That's so awesome, Sanjay. Thanks. Yeah.
Hi everyone. Thanks, Smita, for having me over. My name is Piyush Tiwari. I'm the founder and CEO of Save Life Foundation. Save Life works to save lives on our roads, and we've been working since about 2008, so about 12 years now. And we operate at the intersection of policy as well as on-ground intervention. So you would have heard our name when it comes to the Good Samaritan Law for India, as well as more recently around reducing fatalities on the Mumbai-Pune Expressway through a fairly concerted model. I also teach a course called Governance Entrepreneurship at the Ashoka University that I designed a few years ago, which basically talks about how do you combine the spirit of enterprise with the scale of government to achieve big change. The first time I heard about SDGs was through a friend who actually worked at the UN and was involved in the transition from MDGs to SDGs. I don't know when that was, but it was definitely through a friend who was involved in the process.
My God, you are the dinosaur of us, like early the first amongst us. Yes.
Hi everyone, good afternoon. I am Riya Singhal. I'm the CEO and founder of EcoWare. So I am one of these entrepreneurs I think that Sanjay highlighted and spoke about. I started my journey as an entrepreneur about 11 years ago now, in 2009. I used to work for Pfizer in the UK. I'm actually a pharmacologist and decided to quit my job and do something different, which is when I moved to Delhi, and I was actually shocked at the amount of plastics, right, that people were using. And I thought, let's create something that saves the planet and helps feed humanity safely, because we know that waste segregation doesn't exist in India still, and we don't have any formal systems. So we created a product that's backyard biodegradable. We use agri-waste, so crop waste such as bagasse. And now we also work with incubators at IIT to use paddy straw as our feedstock to help stop the farmer burning their crops. And so we take this crop waste and we convert it into packaging for the food and beverage industry. So you can see our products across like a Subway, Cinnabon, a Starbucks, etc. And the idea is for them to stop using single-use plastic. And so we've been on this journey now for 11 years, and obviously, we continue to fight the cause. And when did I first hear about SDGs? I would have to say about 2 years ago. I was doing some work with the World Economic Forum around circular economy, and I think that even though I was chipping away at sort of the SDG framework, I think it was then that I realized and mapped what was relevant to us. So yeah.
Great, Riya. Very, very happy to have you here. And somehow both of you have shied away from saying all the laurels that I was talking about, but I really want to hear. So I want to hear at least a couple of awards that you have received, Riya and then Piyush. The nominations and not really nominations, but the designations or awards or whatever you have received globally. I want to hear.
So these are always really embarrassing, Smita, but
I want to hear it.
So I think for me, as an entrepreneur, I was, like I said, chipping away at this journey, and I've been at it for about 11 years. But I think, about 2 years ago, I was recognized by the World Economic Forum, and I was invited to be a YGL, which is a young global leader and part of that cohort. And last year, I had the honor of receiving the Nari Shakti Puraskar from the president, which is the highest civilian honor given to a woman. But all of this is wonderful to receive. But I have to tell you, I mean, with the Nari Shakti, for instance, the most empowering thing for me was when the Honorable Maneka Gandhi, sat us down very categorically, and she said, "This is not for what you've done, but for what you can do." And that's what these awards sort of mean to me, because it encourages me to do more and to keep growing this my impact, basically. So yeah.
That's a powerful statement, and I see you carrying it forward very beautifully. Great. Congratulations on all of them. Yes, Piyush, you will be forced to say a couple of lines.
So I'm lucky to be in Riya's company as a YGL at the World Economic Forum. So that's something that can be shared. I'm also an Ashoka Fellow. It's got nothing to do with Ashoka University. It's the Ashoka Foundation run out of DC. And I won the Rolex Award a few years ago for our work. And I think the funnest recognition I've had so far has been the GQ Man of the Year. And clearly not for my looks. They made sure they said GQ Man of the Year, Social Entrepreneurship. So
much deserved.
So clearly, they made sure. So yeah.
Yeah, congratulations on all of them, and very proud to have you both here. And I'm going to go back to Vikram now for further taking the panel forward. And the way we will do is we'll go, and for the benefit of audience, we are going to ask a couple of questions with Vikram, at least get to a certain point of understanding with respect to his work and SDGs, and then move on to Sanjay. And then once we're done with all the panelists, then we will have some concluding questions where all of us can jointly do the discussion. So Vikram, how do you, and I know that you have a huge portfolio, you just mentioned 20 startups, 20 investee firms there. So how do you currently measure the impact of your portfolio companies? Because what I know for sure is that they're all for profits, right? So how do you measure the impact?
Yeah, so, I have to admit, as I mentioned, that I heard the term for the first time last year in July. And, so in that sense, while obviously I see a lot of value and there's huge kind of a passion with which we're driving this whole thing. What we've done so far is, our portfolio is actually structured across different sectors. On one side we have fintech, we have agri-tech, we have health tech, consumer tech. That's the kind of framework in terms of the sector focus. We also have B2B SaaS companies. What we realized is that, of course, the SDG framework we thought was really perfect from investing in venture capital world perspective. And I think that's where we kind of now having seen the application in our portfolio, we are actually now setting up our next fund, which is a little larger fund. And the fund itself will be actually focused on the investing through the SDG framework. What we've done with our existing portfolio is, we have first done an assessment of the companies in terms of how they stand on each of the goals on the framework, and what they can be measured on, and therefore the metric that can be derived out of the framework. which can be used to monitor these companies on a monthly, quarterly, annual basis. And again, this metric can be not only divided across the 17 goals, but also on various other parameters specific to the business of the company. And interestingly, we noticed that our entrepreneurs were very, very excited about this framework and very happy to be monitored on this metric. And of course, not all the 17 goals are applicable to everyone. So people can identify specific goals that are relevant. And but if once you decide these goals, then you have to be very serious about accomplishing certain objectives within those goals, and that is what is more important. So it's a delta which is more important. So in terms of here where you are right now on these 4 goals or 17 goals, this is where you want to be in the next 5 years on these goals, and this is how you will progress over the next 5 years, and then therefore translating that progress to measurable outcomes which can be tracked on a monthly basis is how we are looking at it. And I think in certain cases, in fact, some of our companies were already doing this, and I was quite pleasantly surprised to see that. For example, a company called FT Cash, where we have some DFIs also as investors. So when I started digging deeper, I realized that they were already tracking themselves, on 4 out of 17 goals. But when we started actually, going deeper, we realized that while they were, already following the framework, maybe they were not necessarily tracking themselves in as much depth as we thought, it could be done. So now we are actually, implementing that and, trying to see how best we can really now. So broadly, what we understood is that it's a mindset change which one needs to kind of look at, and that's something which once you start building it as part of the core value system in the business, then it automatically starts kind of shaping up. And I think we're quite excited about it. And as we're building a next fund philosophy, we believe that this will get even more and more exciting going forward. Smita, I think we lost her.
Right. She must be dialing back in.
Sanjay, do you want to add something to that?
Acha. Sure, I can talk a little bit until she comes back. And this whole thing about, the question was about how do you measure the impact of these organizations. I want to take a step back in terms of this journey, in terms of working with social entrepreneurs. Okay, yeah, there she is. Maybe.
Yeah, I'm so sorry. Classic issue of getting dropped from your own event. So thank you so much, Vikram.
I just told Sanjay to give his perspective on the same thing.
Yes.
So that's
And I'll quickly come to you, Sanjay. Just a couple of more things to understand from you, Vikram. Is I have so far not heard of many VCs, venture funds, investment houses in India talking about SDGs. To be honest, you are one of the very few. In fact, you were the first one I heard when Sanjay was doing the webinar on investment through the SDG lens. That's when I heard that okay, an investor is talking about it. Have you, but I'm not in the investment circles, have you heard other investment firms, venture capitalists looking at the social aspect, whether through SDGs or not?
It's not easy. First of all, I think there is a huge gap between what's out there and how people understand the concept. I think many people actually misunderstand this. And what they think that, when you're talking about impact or SDG, then you're compromising on your returns. The moment, you start having that kind of a thought, then by definition, VCs are high risk, high return focus kind of investors. So therefore, people find it difficult to kind of play the two together. So when I actually started researching this area last year, And I mentioned to you about this specific family office. I was amazed to see their portfolio of about 250 companies, of which about I think one fourth of those companies were actually impact or SDG focused investments, and their impact investments IRRs were much higher, by a level of substantial gap. That was very surprising to me. So, which kind of opened a lot more thinking in terms of why is there this notion that if you are investing in impact SDG, you are compromising on your returns. And I realized that there's no compromise. Actually, it's more about awareness. It's more about you know addressing certain areas in a certain way, and being passionate about it without compromising on your value creation or returns. So that's, and you're absolutely right. I think it's not just India. I think globally, I don't think you would see people talking about investing through SDG lens. In fact, even at Davos, where even Sanjay was there when I was there in January this year, I was looking for people, and while there was one fund which I saw, which was actually talking about SDG goals oriented investment, but there was hardly anybody else who was actually talking about investing through SDG lens. Even though there were a segment of people who were talking about SDG and therefore looking more as you know impact first, and therefore don't worry about returns, even if it is grants kind of approach. But this returns kind of understanding that you don't have to compromise on your returns. In fact, you actually get much better returns with that approach is something which I've learned over this last 1 year.
I'm going to play this line again and again on all the social media. We're going to be getting better returns through SDGs. Thank you, Vikram. Yes, Sanjay. So I have a couple of questions for you too. So first, starting with or without SDGs in the scene, how are you measuring the impact of your portfolio firms?
Okay.
Which I believe are all in profit, non-profit both, right? Or only for profit?
Sure. When you talk of social enterprises, as I was defining earlier, they can be either for-profit or not-for-profit. But at Action for India, we disproportionately focus on for-profit social enterprises because we believe in market-based approaches and sustainable business models. And again, I just wanted to mention one thing in terms of, why this focus on social entrepreneurship before I address the question in terms of how are you measuring the impact of the social entrepreneurs. And again, especially in a country like India, the problems are huge, right? I mean, you keep hearing these in the mainstream media. 1/3 of the country below the poverty line, 2/3 of the country below $1 a day. Half the country doesn't have access to clean drinking water, electricity, sanitation, all that. So when these problems are so huge, it's not any one entity or one category of entities that can solve all these problems. The government, it's time. Its mandate is to kind of solve this problem, but it has limited resources. It can't solve everything. The businesses, their primary purpose, at least the way it's been defined according to capitalism for the last 50 years, it's been to make profit. Now, be it Larry Fink or at BlackRock or Sharon Cohen at the Global City Group, they're trying to kind of take the definition of capitalism in a different direction. But there've been some efforts to the corporate social responsibility and all that to make a change. They're doing something. The civil society, they've been trying to address all this problem, but they don't have the heft again or the resources to be able to make a difference. So the thought was that, how can in one's lifetime one make a meaningful difference on most of these problems? And the hypothesis that we went with back in 2012 was that it is these young social entrepreneurs who are energetic, the enthusiasm, who are kind of leveraging the market-based approaches to have a much deeper impact, much more widespread impact. So that was the starting point, and then the thought was in terms of so how do you identify these high potential entrepreneurs, and then how do you flood them with resources in terms of enabling them to scale? And again, in a country like India, if somebody is in one corner of the country developing solutions that affect 1,000 or a few tens of thousands even, that's literally a drop in the ocean. You need solutions that impact millions and tens of millions, but that kind of a scale doesn't happen in a vacuum. You need thoughtful inputs for that. And so traditionally, I mean, most of these social entrepreneurs have emerged from what we refer to as the social benefit sectors, the usual suspects: education, healthcare, agriculture, livelihoods, fintech, cleantech. And the kind of impact that these organizations were generating, it could be, I mean, the most common measures that one hears about is increase in income levels, creation of new jobs, the number of lives that you're kind of actually making a difference to, for example, in healthcare, decrease in the vulnerability of the populations. The people, I mean, one of the biggest reasons why people go below the poverty line is because, the medical expenses become so huge and they don't have a mechanism in terms of, dealing with that. So these have been the general metrics. What is the promise and potential of a framework like the SDGs? Is a universally adopted framework, the 17 goals and the 169 sub goals. And if you are able to kind of, as Vikram was mentioning, have a disciplined mechanism in terms of how you monitor the progress of these things, then you can, announce, share with the world outside, and attract resources into your organization on the basis of the progress that you're making. Be it in terms of the investment that you want to attract, and be it in terms of the employees that you want to get into your firm, be it the kind of customers you want to attract. So that is the promise and potential of the SDGs. And I think there are detailed mechanisms and processes for each of the goals and sub goals in terms of how this impact can be measured.
Absolutely, Sanjay. That's I think not everything can be measured specifically in numbers, but a lot of qualitative impacts that we have to look around. So one quick follow-up question to that is, since you are an accelerator, you have social enterprises with you. Surely you would be having your demo days. Surely you would be taking your social enterprises to. Are you there, Sanjay? Okay, he's okay. Yeah. So surely you're taking your startups to demo days, and having investors look at them. Have you come across such investors who actually ask you for a sustainability plan or a report of your startups, whether in terms of SDGs or not?
It's becoming a trend.
And they could be, VCs or angel. Yeah, they could be seed level, angel. I mean, VCs, any level, institutional or individual.
It's investors. Not as much as it should be, but the very clear trend is that more and more investors are going to kind of ask these questions in terms of, it's not just your financial metrics, but also in terms of the impact metrics that the companies are generating. But the short answer is, do any of them do that? They're not truly that aware or that enlightened about these frameworks of looking at impact. So we'd like to play a role. And again, funds like IVCAP, the next fund, which is going to be a SDG fund, I think this is going to bring it to the mainstream attention of the investors. And this is an efficient mechanism, a globally recognized mechanism through which you assess impact and then monitor, evaluate, and you reward companies which are making more of a difference.
Thanks, Sanjay. I'll quickly come to you now, Piyush, and a couple of questions for you. First one, again, much like I asked other tools, like you are a non-profit, but a non-profit, and then the only entrepreneur probably who actually knew about SDGs the moment I asked him. So you were the only person, to be honest, who actually quickly said, yes, I am impacting 3.6, I'm impacting 11.2, I know where exactly I'm placed. But are you measuring your impact of your work in those terms? How do you actually measure your impact? One is, of course, you must be, because you're a nonprofit, you would have regulatory needs, donor partner needs for reporting and management. But otherwise also, how are you measuring your overall impact of the work? And you can also elaborate on your work if you would like to. What are you doing?
Sure. So, one of the, so our core metric of impact measurement is lives saved. So it's pretty straightforward. We get on certain high fatality stretches, high fatality corridors, and we try and reduce fatalities there by combining forensic crash investigation, data science, bring in other kinds of tech. We're now deploying AI on the Mumbai-Pune Expressway to do some predictive analytics around crashes and all of that. So we're doing a lot of work around this space. Now, given the fact that the issue of road safety directly falls within targets 3.6 and 11.2, there is a lot more awareness in the donor community, at least that is the limited people who fund road safety, even though, as Sanjay mentioned, families get overwhelmed with medical bills at times, and one of the biggest reasons for them to do that is road crashes. it's one of the biggest contributors to poverty, in our country by killing breadwinners, who are out on the roads in unsafe modes of transport, trying to earn a living. So we do have a very clear metric, and there is awareness both in the donor community as well as the global discourse around road safety that we have an alignment towards SDGs, and we have to report on that. As because we work in this issue of road safety, which also impacts development, poverty issues. It also impacts children. It's the biggest, one of the biggest, killers of children in India. So we do get measured on some other aligned, kind of, peripheral metrics as well. We recently had Deloitte that did a measurement on some of our work independently. It was a donor audit, and we've had such audits, in the past. Our donors like Tata Trust and others, they do conduct audits and all of that. But I have to say that the level of alignment with SDGs is very, very limited when it comes to the donor community, and we do see some challenges, and I'll talk about that when we speak about that. But yes, we do align ourselves with SDGs, and we measure ourselves on that, in addition to some other metrics and factors.
Great. So thanks, Piyush. I'm going to ask you a couple more questions. So to the investors, actually, so I have two questions, two perspectives to clarify with you, and let me ask them one by one with you. So do you use the terms SDGs when you are fundraising? Do you leverage the fact that you're pushing forth SDG 3.6 or 11.2 for the nation? And the part two of the same question is, do the investors, like you did mention some of the family donors are aware of it, but do the actual investors, donors come to you, or rather have any of the investors or donors ever landed at your door asking about your work because she is somehow interested in pushing forth 3.6 or 11.2 or any other SDGs that she could see you working on, or any such story from even your peer group, not necessarily you, let's say, but any of your peer group or your friends that has come to your notice?
So not yet. That will be a dream come true if somebody calls and says, "Oh, we know you're working on SDG 3.6, 11.2. We want to fund you," and so not yet. And I don't think any of the organizations that I work with or I serve on the boards of, the nonprofits, they haven't had anyone approaching them in that way. So for sure, no. When we do speak to some international funders, we do end up, some people have articulated their investment philosophies or their visions and missions being aligned with SDGs. And in that case, we make it a point to specifically highlight that we are aligned with not one, but two SDGs. But within India, not yet. We do mention aligned, but neither are we questioned about it, nor is there a discussion that takes place on, how are you impacting, how are you measuring SDGs, and so on and so forth. I think most of the money that we're getting through CSR, for example, is aligned to where, let's say, a company's plants might be, or what their internal investment CSR philosophy might be. When we talk to grant makers, again, it depends on the board's investment philosophy as opposed to an SDG based philosophy. So there is a challenge, but I do believe that whether it's a non-profit or a for-profit, what COVID and climate change is proving is that there is no option but to invest in SDG-aligned organizations, and hopefully sooner than later people will realize that, and will start looking at them from the SDG lens specifically.
Now that you have spoken the most spoken word of the century, COVID, I'm going to ask you one last question on this, and then I'll move on to Ria quickly to understand. So COVID has severely pushed back many of our SDGs, much of our efforts that we put into last several decades, whether it is in poverty or healthcare. It has brought to the front many of these issues again. For example, child labor, it's going to increase after 10 years for the first time. Child routine immunization is gone for a toss. Girl child education is going to be pushed back again. Economics are, of course, getting hit. So SDG 3, 1, 5, 8, so many of them. So considering your work, how has COVID impacted your fundraise or people's focus on road safety per se?
Yeah, we've had a few donor losses because either the funds got redirected towards another COVID specifically, or we had situations where some donors decided not to spend the money, being conservative about the future outlook. So we've had a few losses like that. Um, but fundamentally, what COVID is doing is that it is, uh, at least in the space that we operate in, which is health, public health, right? It's the reason why COVID is around, and the reason why many states and cities and countries have been overwhelmed is because of not really focusing on SDG 3, right, which is around health and and equitable health, not just for the rich but for everyone. And I'm hoping that there is some dialogue that begins on what the fallout of this is in terms of public health and so on and so forth. But just like there are many areas like road safety specifically that are suffering because of realignment of COVID-related focus, and it is going to impact those organizations quite significantly, like it is impacting us. Now, the challenge is that we work. One of the pillars of road safety is emergency medical care. And what we are seeing is that road crash victims are now being taken from one hospital to the other, to the other, to the other, because those hospitals are already overwhelmed with COVID, right? So we are, while everybody is saying that, oh, road crashes have gone down in this period of time, which is a no-brainer. When there is no traffic, there won't be any road crashes. But what we're seeing is that the deaths will increase going forward because the hospitals simply don't have any capacity to deal with any more emergency patients coming in. Just yesterday, I spent almost 3 hours trying to get a patient admitted, regarding whom I got a call from a media person, and that person finally did get admitted, but after 3 hours, and has suffered irreparable damage after that. So, COVID is imposing burdens that are just merely beyond fundraising. It is going to have a very profound impact on many issues and so on and so forth. At the same time, my last point is that we are seeing people come together, a lot of funding community come together, but disproportionately allocate assets to one particular issue that they see as being very visible. So, for example, education, right? So there's a huge move towards trying to provide devices, and all of that is exceptionally important. But at the same time, we are seeing that donors who have been loyal to, let's say, healthcare or to road safety are now moving in that direction because of what others are doing. So we are seeing that sort of an impact, uh, and it is going to be profound going forward.
Yeah, I think it's like moving from one extreme to the other. You did not want to look at healthcare at all. You did not want to look at probably education a lot. And now suddenly you're getting into those and trying to solve the symptoms of the issues. I don't think this is going to solve the root cause, which is more important to look at.
Yeah.
And maybe a holistic view is more important. Thank you so much, Piyush. And I'm going to come to you, Ria, now. First and foremost, let me tell you that when I asked for an entrepreneur, and I had already chosen my panelists, so I did not like say I'm doing a panel who's interested. I knew I wanted Vikram, I knew I wanted Sanjay, I knew I wanted Piyush. Somehow, my final thought was I need an entrepreneur, and I specifically made sure that I'm going to be there on the panel as a woman, but I definitely need another woman on the panel, so to balance the views from all perspectives. So I put across my social media, I'm looking for a rock star woman entrepreneur. And over 40 women across the globe actually reached out, all of them doing fantastic, fantabulous work, like really awesome work. But your work really stood out to me because of the nature of it and the innumerous ways. Like, I'm still trying to think of all the things that I could. If I were to do your SDG mapping, I'd be like this, and then this, and then this, and then this, because it will just go on. From reducing plastic to impacting women empowerment, their economics, circular economy. There's so much you're doing in that one work. So firstly, my thing is, if you want to elaborate a bit more for our audience to understand how you really operate, how you impact women around it, how is your overall work, and then how you measure your impact. And again, it doesn't have to be SDG, but if it is, then good.
Sure. So just in terms of what we do, like I said, we turn agri waste.
Can you be a bit louder, Ria?
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Better. So, just in terms of the work that we do, obviously, like I touched upon, we turn agri waste, which is typically had no value, so it's been used as animal fodder or it's been burned, and we convert that into sustainable packaging to replace single-use plastic, right? And I think, like Vikram touched upon, I think for me, when I started this journey, I was very clear that impact, had to be the core of this, right? And that we were going to treat this as a proper business so that we were taken seriously, our numbers were taken seriously, and we were able to really create that impact. And in 11 years, we created a threefold impact. So from a social perspective, we created an industry that never existed before. So that with that came jobs. Um, and these are typically low-income workers that have had seasonal employment. Now they work with us full time. We have benefits, full-time salaries, etc. And something I'm very passionate about is improving the role of women in manufacturing. Because I don't believe that as a nation we can succeed unless we have our women in the workforce. Right. So I started like our large scale operation that started about 5 years ago um, in Greater Noida. I mean, to open a factory in UP was hard enough. On top of that, to then try and hire women in UP in Greater Noida was super hard. So, my first factory was in Dehradun. It was in Selakui, and it started as an experiment. And then, obviously, as our journey progressed, we realized that this is the future, and we scaled. So when we opened in Greater Noida, we went from a 20 people team to a 120 people team, and they were all men, Smita. And it really took us a lot of time to build confidence as employers, safety measures, flexible working hours, all that sort of stuff. And now we've got 30% of our team are women, so that's something that I'm constantly working towards. From an environmental perspective, 100% of our revenue has been derived from a circular economy model. We've been recognized by Accenture, by FICCI, by Web for all of that. And just last year, we displaced 50 million pieces of single-use plastic with our product, right? And when you look at the plastic world, that's not a lot, but that's for us that was still quite an achievement. And obviously, from a health perspective, we've got fewer people eating out of plastic. When you look at the growth in the food sector, 100% of it, 100% of growth is, about in the better food space, right? So natural, organic, sustainable resource. We want to make sure that packaging keeps up with that. So people are eating right in every sense. And so that's kind of the impact we've created. And just to touch upon, I think what Piyush and everyone else has said is that there's been so much. There's a knowledge gap for every stakeholder, right? So we've created. When I started my journey, no one understood what it meant for a product to be biodegradable, for a product to be compostable, and even till today, it's not like there are standards or measurements in this industry. And we've gone, and it was very important for me to be authentic about what we made, how we manufactured our product, and the fact that we are a closed loop solution. So we looked at global standards, right? We invested in certification. So every product, every claim that we make on our product is certified, and all our certification is out there. It's on the public domain. You can see it. Also, like everyone's spoken about, is that there was a lack of sort of framework and measuring impact, right? So we did a social audit. We worked with a company in Singapore about 4 years ago, and we said, guys, will you come over? Will you audit us, right? Because again, that was authenticity at its strength to the brand, and validated what we were trying to achieve. So that was done on our own, this thing, and we just spend a lot of time educating people to say that this is what it means for a product to be biodegradable, to be compostable. And whether you're using EcoWare, whether you're using something else, just be aware of the greenwash out there, because there's just so much of it. So yeah, and I think that that's basically been the bedrock of it.
Sorry?
I said that's been at the core of what we do.
Yeah, absolutely. So Firstly, awesome work, Ria. Again, hats off to your patience for 11 years. You've been able to keep pushing it and making it happen. My question is more about now the funding side of it. Uh, I know that you have clocked $2 million last year. I know that you are over 100 people team. I know you are a profitable business. I know you are a planet positive business, right? There is nothing I can point out in your business model per se as a investor, as an entrepreneur, as a layman, which I would say there is something about this business that I don't like. There is nothing like that. How have you been able to raise funds? Did you want to raise funds? What was your experience overall around funding?
How honest do you want me to be about this journey?
We need to hear this story.
So about 3 years ago, I worked with the Indian Railways, with IRCTC. My relationship goes back with them all the way to the Commonwealth Games, because that was our first largest client in 2010. And about 3 years ago, we reconnected with IRCTC when they got back the catering for the railways. And we said, guys, you talk about green and eco-friendly, and like, you're still serving food out of aluminum casseroles. Like, what are you doing? So we worked, Smita, for about 10 months. We worked in their kitchens. Like, we really studied their entire process, and we went and developed something that was bespoke for them, right? And they were very excited about it. And we said, okay. And that was the point. That was sort of after 2015, that was sort of the next growth stage for us as an organization. I mean, we weren't putting all our eggs in one basket, and IRCTC was by no means our largest client, but it was a feather on our cap, because it highlighted, I suppose, the seriousness, our commitment, and our ability to innovate, right, with a large scale customer. And for us, we were just excited because we were going to now have the opportunity to reach so many more people. With sitting on trains, eating out of our product. And we said, okay, let's try and fundraise. And my husband's an ex-investment banker. He's also now my CFO. And he said, this is it. I think we should do this. I said, okay, fine. I mean, if you want to, let's do it. It was the most abysmal process I had ever been through. And no one understood what it meant, what we were doing, the value addition our organization would bring, and our product brings, right? And so and about 6 months in, I said, you know what, I'm sorry, I don't want to do this anymore. I don't want to dilute my company to someone who does not understand what we're trying to do, because we're not going away. This is the future, right? And so we went to a local bank, and the head of the branch manager was a woman, and she said, what do I need to do to help you? And it was seamless. And we raised about $1 million in debt, and we grew. And it was the best decision that I think we made. So that was so kind of fast forward 3 years later. Now we were approached by a foreign fund about towards the end of last year, and they were like, we're really excited, very dedicated towards the environment and planet positive businesses, and they approached us, and it made sense, right? Because I was like, I don't want someone to just cut me a check and walk away. I need a financial value add and actual impact value add, and they somehow seemed to tick those boxes. And we said, okay, fine. So we engaged, we had a conversation, and about April, when it came to signing the SHA, COVID hit, and they tried to change the valuation of the company. And I just said, I'm sorry, that doesn't work for me. So we walked away. The good news is we've had 2 grants this year, and that's kind of come in, and in recognition of our work, and that's been fantastic. And so there's been this whole thing, like I said, I think there's a huge gap in knowledge, all stakeholders, right? There isn't a framework system. I don't think maybe I'm wrong. At least I haven't come across an investor who, when you talk about impact, when you talk about SDGs, really understands what you're out there achieving. I hate playing the gender card, but I'm put it out there. Investment in women entrepreneurs, not there. So I think that landscape definitely needs to change. And ultimately, I think that everyone needs to see sustainability as a value addition, right? Because you and I talk about it. You, uh, you measure a company's value 5 years from now. Anyone who has sustainability built into their business model is going to be more valuable. And you will gain, whether you are a CEO, whether you're an investor, whether you're a founder, whether you're a shareholder. So it isn't like you've got to start understanding and looking into this properly, basically. So yeah, that's been my
One quick response, Smita,
Beautiful.
to what Ria just mentioned. So, if there's one commitment that I can make in response to what Ria shared, I think through work at Action for India or through the impact investing initiative that you're considering about, I make a commitment that entrepreneurs such as you in the future will have more of a say, more of an ally on their side. So, that a commitment I'm making, Ria. So, yeah, over.
thank you, Sajai. I look forward to it.
Absolutely. Sanjay, thank you so much for coming forward and encouraging Ria for it. I think, with all due respect to Piyush, Ria, and me, frankly, with all respect to our our work, we need more of Vikrams and Sanjays around to really help our work grow, and not with just investment per se, but letting people be aware that this is a way to make profit. Yeah, that is really important, because people, like Vikram very beautifully said, that people keep these two things separate, that profit is separate, social is separate. That's not true anymore. Yeah.
I just want to add to this. I think it's a very important and very good to hear Ria's story, and it's very exciting actually. We'd love to know more and you know chat more about it. But I think I'll tell you the one of the issues. While there is a gap in terms of understanding in the investor community, in terms of understanding the value of such businesses, I think there is a bigger gap on the other side as well, in terms of understanding of what kinds of investors you should be talking to in the first place, or how you should be pitching yourself and how do you show your value to the investor. Many times, and I've seen that majority of the entrepreneurs have this problem. It's not just the impact entrepreneurs. I think this problem is there because the entrepreneurs by nature are very passionate about what they do, and if they see value, the thought process is, I see value, why can't investors see value in me? It's that mindset, right? I mean, which is right in a way, but at the same time, I think it's also about understanding what the investor would typically look for, what they want, and therefore how do you actually tell your story is very important. Many times you tell your story from your perspective, which is great, but I think you also need to think about what is the objective of the investor, what are they trying to accomplish. They have an entry point, they have an exit point, they have to return their money to their investors, what kind of return targets they would have, if they will try to put a term sheet based on certain criteria, certain exit clauses. Many times entrepreneurs are completely new to those clauses, and it takes a long time for them to understand and bridge the gap. I think the biggest problem in this sector is, one is, of course, as I mentioned, investors themselves are struggling to come closer to this whole aspect of, yes, you can generate very good returns from this, but I think even bigger gap on the entrepreneur side, in terms of first going to the right investors and then telling the story the way it should be told.
One quick comment again, Asmita. Back in the 1920s, when this whole, I think, Wall Street crash happened in the US, there was a event that happened wherein all the accounting standards became more robust, stringent, and as a result of that, more finances flowed into the businesses, and that led to the increase in the economy and so forth. Right now, there's a similar opportunity in terms of, there's a new concept called impact weighted accounts. So it's not just about the financial performance. Each of the businesses are being kind of evaluated in terms of the social impact that's generating on the environment, on the sustainability, on the governance practices. And I think if there are two companies, say a chemical company, one has $13 billion of valuation, other has $3 billion of valuation, but you are not going to kind of just pay attention to the financial metrics in terms of, if you want to be an investor, if you want to be an employee, if you want to be a customer, you look in terms of the net, the impact weighted account. And as a result of this trend, Ria, I'm sure that you and entrepreneurs in your category will have an easy time moving forward. That I'm positive about. Back to you, Smita.
Points well taken, both Vikram and Sanjay, and truly appreciate your willingness to support the ecosystem by coming forth and giving your insights. So that books both of you for some other panel or some other discussions where we are going to actually chalk out as to how should a for-profit social enterprise present themselves to different VCs. So that's a very critical discussion, very important, not just for the entrepreneurs here, but also for the investors, so they are able to probably make better decisions, better judgments on the data that they are looking at. Now, we don't have many questions right now, so I'm going to take the liberty of actually asking something that I've been itching to ask from the start. And it is something that all of you could respond to with your own perspective. There is no right or wrong, but at what stage of an enterprise, and think of everything from the idea stage, startups, to the early stage, to growth stage, and then there are huge large businesses, enterprises, which are already doing a lot of sustainability related work. Yes, Akshat, I see you have a question. We'll come to you. So my question to you all is, at what stage do you think a business, whether it's a startup or an enterprise, should start thinking about sustainability or adopting sustainable practices, and then at what stage they should actually start measuring themselves on it? Or somebody, whether as an investor you should start you start looking at them, at what stage would you measure them, and at what stage you think they should start adopting sustainable practices? We could again go the same round, Vikram, starting with you.
I think to me, it's part of your core value system, right? So I think when you're even thinking of your business idea, at that stage itself, you have to think of sustainability. You know, how you're going to make an impact, what specific areas you're going to impact, and you know, unless you start thinking at that stage itself, you know, you would not get it right, in my view. Or if you try to just kind of force sustainability into your business somehow, just because you think there are different categories of investors that you want to target, and therefore you would want to pitch your story in a sustainable kind of the sustainability story, it doesn't really work, because you know, you may be trying to force fit something which doesn't happen. When you should track it, and I think, you know, then it's, once you put it as part of your core value proposition and as part of your business model, and part of your scale plan, then I think you have to make sure that it's about, you know, tracking yourself to make sure that you're actually going the path that you have, you know, made for yourself. It's more, you know, tracking yourself and, you know, making sure that you actually are going in the direction that you initially thought that you would be going to. And that's and it's very visible, you know, even when you go out in the market to raise funds, you know, your passion to do it and how you are actually, your seriousness is reflected in the way you're tracking it, and your progress actually shows the reality on the ground. So, you know, anybody who wants to be part of your journey, you know, would naturally see it if you're actually looking at that way.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you, Smita. My thought is, again, yeah, the earlier in the cycle that you adopt this framework, yeah, the better it is for you. And again, as I mentioned before, there is this definitive trend, and this will become even more pronounced with time, in terms of the investors asking it, are we doing it just for the money? Are we going to kind of look at the impact? The companies themselves, are we just want more sales, or are we looking at the impact on the environment? And the customers talking in terms of, hey, is it just about price and convenience, or is it alignment with what my core values are? So these things, these questions will be asked by stakeholders across the ecosystem. So given that's going to be the trend, I think the companies need to start this, have this in their architecture right from the beginning. But then the question also arrives in terms of, people always do a cost benefit analysis. What is the cost involved in kind of making these measurements early on? So that's a decision that will differ from sector to sector, company to company. That is a decision that the entrepreneurs has to make on a case by case basis. But I'd highly encourage that they get it into the system as early as possible.
Yes, Piyush.
Yeah, so I agree with that. I think the right answer is really that it should be part of the vision, mission, values. And when you're ideating, you have to have some of that piece involved in that. When I first started studying about impact investing, there's a term called ESG, which is environment, social, and governance that people must focus on. But there's also the concept of mission creep. And mission creep tends to happen for various reasons. It happens sometimes because of pressure from board members, pressure from investors. At the end of the day, if you're a for-profit and you have an investor who is expecting returns, then there is an element of pressure that comes with that. So, in addition to saying that you should build it from the very beginning, I would also say that you must, when you're structuring your board, you must have some activist board members. You must have some people, some investors who are really going to back you in remaining true to your vision and remaining true to either the SDGs or the ESGs or the whatever you're aligning yourself with, because that's very critical. You need support to stay on that path. So yeah, so that's what my view is. I was, as you're aware, I was in private equity before I started, before I moved to Save Life, and so my understanding is that eventually it does come down to balance sheets. The aspect of the weighted impact weighted accounts is incredible, but I'm not sure how many people are adopting stuff like that. Double bottom line, and I mean there are various concepts that are linked to impact. So you need to surround yourself with people who will back you in the boardroom, who will ensure that there is alignment. As far as the bigger organization is concerned, an entrepreneur is not the only one who's linked to the organization. There are many other people, and there has to be alignment amongst all those people involved.
Very nicely said, Piyush. Thank you. Yes, Priya. When should a startup adopt?
I think I agree that it needs to be part of your DNA, and I think I agree with everything Piyush just said completely. So the words right out of my mouth. So that whatever he said absolutely resonates. You definitely need someone on your board who can always, like that activist role, and yeah, then that's important.
Great. So, well, we have one question coming up, and so and looking at the nature of the question, I am thinking I'll put it to you, Sanjay. The question is from Akshat on the audience. In the audience, it says, "I intend on coming where bringing out a new material to provide an alternative to plastic packing. Are there startups or some government or private institute where they teach and they could how to do it and how to research on it, how to come up with a material which is an alternative to plastic?" And maybe Ria, you could also answer.
Sure. So I am I do not have a ready answer for you. Go to this institution or this organization that can help you. But I'm sure within the IIT networks, even for example, I mentioned earlier on that we're currently running a social enterprise accelerator at IIT Hyderabad. If the questioner were to send me a note with a brief in terms of the work that he's doing with this new material, I'm happy to connect you with a relevant professor or member of the IIT Hyderabad institution and to take this discussion forward. But this is again a problem that's been attempted, I'm sure, in this whole clean tech, clean energy domain, and plastic pollution has been a problem that people have been trying to solve for a long period of time. And this is a welcome addition to those string of efforts. And I'm happy to follow up with you one-on-one post this call in terms of connecting you with an individual or organization who can guide you further. Ria,
you want to add to it where they could actually learn about an alternate material?
So I think I mirror what Sanjay said. IIT has been very good with playing with different types of materials. Like for instance, even the paddy straw that we're now looking to use as our raw material as an incubator at IIT Delhi that's working working with aggregators, collecting in their labs, etc. So I think the IIT network is definitely one to reach out to. I haven't come across anyone else, to be honest.
Thanks a lot. Thank you all for joining in. Thanks, Vikram, Sanjay, Piyush, and Ria. Really very grateful because all the inputs and insights you have given, I couldn't have paid for this amount of insights in any which way. So thank you so much. I'm very grateful. And yes, going forward, one request, Vikram and Sanjay, from you. It looks like social space is something where there is a lack of awareness from investor perspective, from entrepreneurs' perspectives. Clearly, we have understood that not many people know about SDGs, or at least not how to adopt them in a clearly financially viable way. So that is something I'm going to follow up with you, how we could actually help out entrepreneurs and, of course, work with more investors to bring in onto the forum.
Cool.
Yes,
And
we would love to work with you on that. I think,
yeah, thank you.
Great insight.
And
Thank
any
you.
of you want
Thanks,
to
everyone.
get SDG mappings done, I'm here. Shameless plug-in. Yes.
Cool, cool.
You don't ask, you don't get.
Yes, great. Thank you so much. Really, thank you. Appreciate
Thanks,
it.
everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bye-bye.